Hi there, and welcome back to Lawyer Launcher, the podcast for law students who are serious about building a legal career with intention, with clarity, and with confidence. I'm so glad you're here today. Before we get into it, I wanted to ask you for something, and I'm going to be really honest with you about why I'm asking, because I think you deserve that. If this podcast has ever given you one idea that made things feel a little clearer, one strategy that helped you show up a little bit better, or one moment where you thought, yes, someone actually gets what this is like, then I would love your help in getting into the hands of more people who need it. And here's what I'm asking. Please follow or subscribe to Lawyer Launcher on whatever platform you're listening to right now. It takes one tap, and it really makes a difference in how this show gets discovered by other students. If you have a moment, leave a rating. A 5-star review takes less than 10 seconds, and it genuinely helps. And if you want to go an extra step, even a written review, even just a sentence or two, signals to other law students that this is a place that's worthy of their time. And it means so much. The team I have is you, my listeners. And the reach that you have inside your law school, your study groups, your networks, your law firms are what I'm trying to reach. So if you know someone who's navigating the early stages of their legal career and could use some honest, practical support, please share this episode with them or any of the episodes. Send them the link. Mention it in passing. You never know whose day or career it might change. Every follow, every rating, every share puts this content in front of the people who it's made for. And that genuinely matters to me. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate it. Now, let's get busy. This is Lawyer Launcher Behind the Bar, the podcast for law students, articling students, interns, and new lawyers who want to get hired back, and build successful, thriving careers. I am Susan Van Dyke. Drawing on more than 30 years of experience advising law firms and mentoring lawyers, I'll help you understand how law firms really run and operate, what they value, and what it takes to stand out. Each episode brings you practical advice, insider perspective, and conversations with experts who want to see you succeed. So let's get you hired back, and ready to thrive. I want to start today with a question, and I want you to actually sit with it for a moment before we move on. What if the one thing standing between you and your best work right now, today, is something you simply haven't asked for? Not a skill you haven't learned, not an experience you haven't earned yet, or a connection you haven't made, something far more immediate than any of that. A need that's going unmet, quietly draining your focus and your energy day after day. That's what today is about. It's about making space for yourself in your professional environment. And when I say making space, I mean something really specific. I mean knowing what you need to do your best work, and then having the courage and the words to ask for it. Now, I know some of you might be thinking that sounds more like a wellness topic than a career topic, and I want to push back a little bit on that, because I think that instinct is exactly the challenge we have. It's one of the most practical conversations we can have, because I've seen time and again talent and capable law students underperform, not because they lack ability, but because they're quietly tolerating something that's getting in their way, and they haven't said a single word about it. And here's the thing. This isn't just about my observation. The data backs it up. Research from LawCare found that nearly 60% of legal professionals report poor mental well-being. And the top concerns are stress, anxiety, and career worry. And more recently, in 2026, the report found that more than half of lawyers surveyed had considered leaving their roles altogether because of burnout. Not because they didn't love the work, because they didn't know how to protect themselves within it. And that's a gap this episode is going to close. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to look at why we stay silent when we have a need. We're going to walk through some real scenarios that brings this to life. I just had a client recently, actually two people recently, who shared experiences with me. And that was the inspiration for this episode. So I'm going to offer you a mindset shift that I think is generally a game changer. And then we're going to get really practical, because that's what I bring to you in this podcast, very practical steps that you can put into action right away. So I'm going to give you some real scripts and words, some real situations, so you're never left wondering what to say. And I know that's, again, really important to law students in particular, not knowing what the words are. And you need scripts, you need language that makes you feel a little bit more supported. So we're going to get into that. So why do we stay silent? Let's start by naming what's exactly going on when we don't speak up. Because I don't think it comes from laziness, and I don't think it comes from not caring. I think it comes from something far more understandable. When you're new, whether you're new in your first summer position, an articling placement, or an internship, or just sort of starting out in a firm, you are so very aware of how much you don't yet know. You're in rooms with people who have been doing this for 20, 30 years. You're working incredibly hard to show that you belong there. And the very last thing you want is to draw attention to yourself in a way that might suggest otherwise. I get it. So when something isn't working, when your environment is uncomfortable, when a process is unclear, or when you're anxious about something and you generally don't know where you stand, the default response is to absorb it, is to push through, to figure it out yourself and not say a word. And part of that comes from the culture of the legal environment, for sure. I've seen that. There's a deeply embedded ethos in law that, early career professionals are there to observe, to adapt, and to endure. You pay your dues. You don't make requests. You make yourself useful. And in doing so, you make yourself small. And then layer on top of that, the imposter syndrome, that voice that says, if you ask for something, if you raise a need, someone might realize you don't fully belong here. That a reasonable request will somehow reveal something you'd rather keep hidden. But here's what I need you to hear. Staying silent has a cost. And that cost is paid directly by your performance. So when you're physically uncomfortable, you're distracted, right? When you're consumed by unresolved anxiety, you can't bring your full focus to your work. When something in your environment is out of alignment with what you need, it takes up mental and emotional space that should be going towards the work that you're actually here to do. And that's not a character flaw. That's now a human being function. The question isn't whether unmet needs affect your performance. They absolutely do. The question is whether you're going to do something about it. Let me tell you about a situation that I heard about involving a junior lawyer recently. And it was someone who wasn't far out of law school, early days of the career at a firm. And she had an office chair that was genuinely uncomfortable. And I don't mean like mildly like irritating. And I mean the kind of discomfort that left her with a sore back mid-morning every single day. And that sore back became this constant low-grade distraction. She'd find herself sitting around, trying to get comfortable, standing up, losing her train of thought. The discomfort was always there, taking up some slice of her attention. Now, I can already hear some of you thinking, that's an easy fix. Just ask for a new chair, for heaven's sakes. Well, you're right. It is an easy fix. But she didn't ask, and not for a long time. Why? Because good office chairs aren't cheap. She knows this. And because asking felt like shining a spotlight on herself in a way that she just wasn't comfortable with. She didn't want to seem demanding, didn't want to be that person who asked for special treatment. She was new, finding her footing, and it just felt like the wrong kind of visibility. So she absorbed it. She pushed through, and day after day, a portion of her focus and her energy was quietly being consumed by something that had nothing to do with her work. Eventually, she did get access to a new chair, by chance actually, and one that fit properly and actually supported her, and that shift was immediate. She could sit and concentrate for long stretches of time without distraction, and her focus came back. Her input improved, and her experience of her workday improved too. And the cost of a chair for the firm is the same either way. The only difference is that for months she had been operating below her potential because of something that one simple, reasonable conversation could have fixed. Think about that. Firms invest enormously in the students and lawyers they hire. The training, the mentorship, the salary, overhead, it's significant. And the cost of a chair is really nothing against that. And yet the reluctance to ask was costing her and the firm every single day. And the chair is a metaphor, of course. Your version might be a monitor that strains your eyes by early afternoon. It could be the workspace that's too noisy for deep concentration. It might be software needs. It might be a second screen that would make the document review dramatically faster. These are not extravagances. These are the tools that allow you to do the job well. And a professional who isn't properly tooled isn't really working at optimal performance. And it's really that simple. Let me share a second situation with you. And this one's quite different. And it's about a different kind of unmet need. It's not a physical need. It's an informational one. I work with a new lawyer who was approaching his first formal performance review in his firm, and he'd been working really hard. He was super engaged. He was showing up, and by all measures, it seemed like everything was going well. But the review process at his firm wasn't particularly transparent. He didn't know exactly what was being evaluated, didn't know how feedback was going to be delivered, didn't know kind of where he stood. And so he worried and ruminated for weeks. He ran through scenarios in his head over and over. He started to spiral and second guess conversations he'd had months earlier. He replayed moments and he was looking for clues he might have missed. And he was doing his job. But a real and significant portion of his mental and emotional energy was being consumed by the anxiety about something that hadn't even happened yet and may not materialize in the way that he feared. So the advice I gave him was just ask. Not a formal meeting, not a big serious conversation, just a direct professional question to his supervising lawyer. And it went something like this. Is there anything I should be preparing for my upcoming review? Is there anything I should be aware of going into it? Are there any clues that you can give me as to where I'm standing? That's it. A couple of questions. So he went ahead and asked, and he was reassured right away. The review was going to reflect his strong performance. They were happy to have him, and he had a bright future ahead. So weeks of anxiety gone, just like that. He'd asked one couple of questions at an appropriate time, and he was relieved of his stress. And it was an entirely appropriate question. Now, I want to be clear about something. The anxiety wasn't irrational. When you're new and the process isn't transparent, uncertainty is completely natural. But the anxiety was being fed not by reality, but by the absence of information. And the absence of information, that was entirely within his power to change. And he'd been treating the performance review as something that was happening to him, a process he was subjected to, not something he could engage with. That passivity was costing him weeks of mental bandwidth and could have been spent focused on his work. So when he shifted from passive to active, he made one well-placed professional ask, the uncertainty collapsed, and with it his anxiety. That is what making space for yourself looks like. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes it's just one question asked at the right moment that gives you what you need to get back to your best. And it was an important lesson that he learned, that he was worthy. Now, I want to step back for a moment and talk about why I think this topic matters so much right now, because I don't want you to think these are isolated stories. There is a well-being crisis in the legal profession, and I mean that without exaggeration. Research from LawCare, one of the leading well-being organizations for legal professionals, found that nearly 60% of legal professionals report poor mental well-being. And their most recent data showed a 13% increase in people reaching out for support in a single year, with stress, anxiety, and career worry at the top of the list. And the American Bar Association has been sounding the alarm on this for many years. They noted that lawyers rank among the most anxious, stressed professionals in any field, and law students aren't immune. So the patterns and habits that you develop now while you're still in school are the ones that tend to follow you into practice. And here's what I find so striking about all of this. The vast majority of lawyers who report burnout, who end up walking away from careers they worked incredibly hard to build, they didn't start out that way. They started out exactly like you, talented, motivated, determined. And somewhere along the way, they learned to absorb things rather than address them. They learned to stay silent rather than speak up. And over time, that cost them. So I'm not sharing this to alarm you. I'm sharing this because I think the solution is generally within your reach. And it starts with small things. The chair, the question before the performance review, the 2-minute clarifying conversation before you spend hours going in the wrong direction. These are how you protect your performance and your well-being and your longevity in this profession. The ABA's well-being work talks a lot about psychological safety, creating environments where people feel they can speak up. But psychological safety isn't just something firms create for you. It's something you can claim for yourself, one reasonable ask at a time. So I want to provide you with a few more examples of where this plays out, because it isn't a single scenario. It's a pattern that shows up consistently in early legal careers. Unclear instructions on a file. You've been given an assignment, but the instructions were brief and you're not sure what the finished product should look like or even how deep the analysis should go. The instinct is to guess and get started because asking feels like admitting you didn't fully understand. But 3 hours of work in the wrong direction costs far more than a 2-minute clarifying conversation at the start. Navigating firm culture without a map. Every firm has unwritten rules, how people communicate, what initiative looks like without overstepping, When you're new, you're navigating all of this blind. Finding trusted colleagues and simply asking is not a sign of weakness. It's genuinely good professional judgment. An unresolved conflict taking up space in your head. If there's been a difficult moment with a colleague, a misunderstanding, a moment of friction, and you're carrying it with you, it will affect your work. Unresolved tension occupies mental real estate. Addressing it directly and professionally is an act of self-management. A workload that is genuinely unmanageable. This is one that new lawyers are most reluctant to raise. If quality is starting to slip and deadlines are becoming precarious, staying silent is not the safe choice. It's the risky one. Most supervising lawyers would far rather have that conversation early than discover the problem when options are more limited. The pattern is the same every time. There's something you need, and the instinct is to stay quiet and push through. And in every case, that silence comes at a cost. Now, I want to offer you a mindset shift. And I think if you let this one really land, it might change the way you approach this entirely. And I want you to imagine just for a moment that you're the supervising lawyer, that you have a small team of junior lawyers and students working with you. You've invested in how they're doing, and their work directly affects the quality of what goes out under your name. Now, imagine that one of them is struggling. The chair is causing them pain. They're anxious about a review. They're stuck on an assignment, and they say nothing. They absorb it. They push through. Would you want that? Would you want your people to quietly tolerate things that are getting in the way of their best work rather than just telling you? Of course you wouldn't. You would want to know. You'd want the chance to do something about it, because fixing it costs you very little and the alternative costs you a lot. Supervising lawyers are busy, and they're not always tuned in to every need around them. So they're not withholding support. So when you raise something professionally and clearly, you're not burdening them. You're giving them the chance to do what most good supervisors would want to do: help the people around them succeed. Speaking up when it's done thoughtfully and framed around your performance doesn't make you seem needy. It makes you seem self-aware. And good supervisors will notice that. One really important note I want to make sure I share with you here is what we're talking about here has to be reasonable. It shouldn't be costly, and it shouldn't be anything that suggests you need special treatment. We're talking about things that, when they're in place, allow you to do your work well, and when they're missing, quietly prevent it. So if you are distracted, I want you to come back to me and pay attention. There's a real difference between advocating for what you need and projecting a sense of entitlement. In a law firm environment, that distinction matters enormously. Partners and founders have built their practices over many years, decades, and lots of hard work. They are attuned, sometimes acutely, to whether or not a new professional understands the privilege of being there and is earning their place, or whether they've arrived with a sense that the firm exists to serve their preferences. That perception, fair or unfair, can follow you. So before you make any ask, apply a simple test. Is this genuinely about my ability to do my best work? Or is it about my personal comfort or preference? If it's the former, it's a reasonable professional conversation. If it's the latter, it can wait, or it may not be appropriate at all. So good judgment here is itself a signal of professionalism. When you frame a request thoughtfully, choose the right moment, and show that you've considered whether it's truly necessary. You're not just asking for something, you're demonstrating the kind of self-awareness and discretion that firms value in people they invest in. The goal is never to draw attention to your needs. It's to quietly remove the obstacles that are standing between you and your very best work. Now, here's a part of the episode I'm most excited to share with you, because this is where it gets real. Knowing that you should speak up is one thing. Having the actual words ready so that when the moment comes, you're not fumbling, that's something else entirely. So let me give you some scripts or some real language. Before we get into the words, I want you to think about one principle. You don't need a formal meeting for most of these conversations. A formal meeting makes the ask feel bigger than it probably is. Instead, look for those micro moments. Pair your ask with something that's already happening, the end of a check-in, or a moment your supervisor stops by, or a natural pause in a conversation. Keep it brief, keep it focused, and orientate your ask towards the work. So here's your first situation. Ask for something in your physical workspace. Maybe it's a chair, a monitor, software, better setup, a light. Here's something you might say. I wanted to mention something just really quickly. I noticed that my current setup is causing me some physical discomfort through the day, and it's been making it harder to stay focused for long stretches, and I don't want it to affect the quality of my work. Is there a process for requesting a change, or is there someone that I should talk to about it? Notice what that does. It names the issue, connects it to your performance, not the personal comfort. And it ends with a practical question, not an open-ended complaint. Scenario 2. Let's ask where you stand before a formal review, and it can sound like this. I know my review is coming up in a few weeks, and I want to make sure I'm as prepared as I can be. And I'm not looking for a full review. I just wanted to check in and ask, is there anything specific I should be thinking about or working on between now and then, or am I generally on track from your perspective? Short, respectful of their time, and proactive. And it gives your supervisor an easy way to either reassure you or give you something useful. Both are good outcomes. Situation 3. Let's ask for clarification before starting an assignment. And the script could sound something like this. Before I dive in, I want to make sure I'm clear on what you're looking for so I can use your time as efficiently as possible. Could I ask a couple of questions about scope? Specifically, is there a precedent I should be working from? And how deep are you expecting the analysis to go? The key move here is framing the question being in service of their time, not just your own understanding. That positions you as thoughtful and efficient, not uncertain. There are 4 principles through all of these. Orientate your performance, not your comfort. The ask is always about what you need to do your best work. Be specific. A focused, concrete ask is far easier to respond to than a vague one. Come with a path forward. Is there some process for this? Could I find 10 minutes this week? Shows initiative and it makes it easy for somebody to say yes. Use existing moments. A 30-second exchange at the right moment is often all it takes. Before I let you go, I want to give you something specific to do. Not just think about, something to do. I want you to identify one thing that you've been tolerating that's quietly getting in the way of your best work. Just one. It might be physical, it might be informational, it might be relational, procedural, it might feel significant, or it might seem almost embarrassingly small. Name it, write it down if that helps make it real, and then, before the next episode comes out, make the ask. You have the language, you have the framing, you know how to orientate it towards your performance, and find the right moment so it doesn't feel like a production. The only thing left to do is actually do it. And here's what I want you to hold on to. Asking, when it's done professionally and thoughtfully, is not a sign that you're needy. It's not a sign that you're underprepared or expect more than your share. It's a sign that you understand the conditions in which you can do your best work, that you care enough about your performance to protect it. That is not a weakness. That's self-awareness. And that is exactly the quality that distinguishes the professionals who genuinely thrive in this field from the ones who just endure it. We started today with one question. What if the one thing standing between you and your best work is something you simply haven't asked for yet? So I hope by now you know your answer. And I hope you also know, really know, that you had the right to ask for it. And if there's nothing in the way, then carry on. But now you have a tool when and if anything is in your way, or there's something that's going to help you be more productive, you now know how to ask, and you now know you're worthy. If today's episode spoke to you, please take a moment, just a moment, and follow Lawyer Launcher. Leave a rating or share this with someone in your life, in your world who could use it. It genuinely helps the community grow and find people it was made for. I'll see you in a couple weeks. Thanks for joining me.